those of you I haven't met, I'm Glen Jones. I'm licensed by Bishop James to provide diocesan support for all chaplains in Cumbria under the heading of Chaplain to Chaplains. Well, I wasn't sure who was going to be in this Breakout group, and Breakout is an uncomfortable term for me. I've had 43 years of prison ministry, and Breakout just doesn't sit comfortable. Never mind. I've worked on the premise that there would be in this group maybe those who are already chaplains and want to hear what other chaplains have to say. There might be those who are considering some type of chaplaincy ministry in the future, and there might be parish or circuit ministers who might have chaplains on their patch and wonder how it all kind of fits together. Well, there is sound theology behind chaplaincy. The theological premise is based on 3 points. One, as Christian chaplains, our default position is the Bible. 2 is that chaplains are just where people are, in amongst it, so to speak. And we support this from 2 Corinthians 1. Praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of compassion and the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our troubles, so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves received from God. In other words, the comfort, joy, and assurance, even in trials, that we have received, we offer back to those in our care by what we do. Now that's, as Bishop Emma rightly said, now that's not to say that we fall back on the much abused saying that the great Francis of Assisi never said, preach the gospel and if necessary use words. No, chaplains meet people at their place and point of need with reference to our faith. And the third principle is that chaplains take seriously the exhortation from 1 Peter 3:15. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give a reason for the hope in Christ, for the hope that you have, but to do this with gentleness and respect. Well, it's this verse that keeps us grounded in Scripture, Christ-focused, and from overstepping the mark by insensitively proselytizing. Well, to set all this into some kind of pragmatic context, in a moment I'll hand over to Debbie, who'll give us some insights into her own chaplaincy within healthcare during the pandemic. And then on to Alan. What's Alan going to do? He's going to reflect on how parish ministry complements his many community projects, as well as his chaplaincy to Carlisle United and Pirelli, alongside his urban chaplaincy. And finally to Dave, for some thoughts on how his chaplaincy to Rugby League and their officials and Haven Saint street pastors, as well as his hospital chaplaincy, fit in with the 4 marks of Vision Refresh to follow daily, care deeply, speak boldly, and tread gently. Before I hand over to Debbie, can I just say that this is a short session? Can I encourage you to ask your questions as we go along via the chat facility, rather than saving them to the end when we will inevitably run out of time? So Debbie, over to you.
Oh, thank you. It's great to be here. I'm Debbie Wild, Chaplaincy Team Leader at Furness General Hospital. I'm also a member of the Methodist Diaconal Order. Many of you will know that's a dispersed religious community serving throughout the UK and the world. Our ordination promises are ones of lifelong service and service that's usually on the margins of the church. So I arrived here about 2.5 years ago after 12 years as chaplain to Oxford University Hospitals. And here I lead a team of sessional and volunteer chaplains. Furness is part of the University of Morecambe Bay Hospitals Trust, with a chaplaincy team leader on each of our 3 sites. We work incredibly closely as site team leads and as our teams. We have to at the moment particularly. Furness Hospital has a large range of hospital services, including accident and emergency departments, critical care units, consultant-led beds. We also provide a range of planned care facilities, including outpatients, diagnostic therapies, oncology, day units, and inpatient surgery. Together, we care for 350,000 people across the Bay. So it's essential that each of our hospitals in the Bay is embedded in the local communities that we serve, listening to the span of needs demographically, culturally, and so on. It's especially vital in times of a pandemic, which we'll talk more about later. First impressions are important, and the care I first experienced from the Trust was the one I received as a very grateful daughter of a patient. Our Trust has been through difficult years, and openly we acknowledge that. But what I've found is a community bravely facing criticism with open and honest commitment to our changing our ethos, our policies, and our practice to making them better. However, the past few months have been like nothing I can ever remember in over a decade of healthcare chaplaincy. Chaplaincy is rarely predictable, but we face challenges we could never have suspected. Since the onset of COVID-19, the intensity of our day-to-day work has heightened for staff in so many areas. Some, because of restrictions on elective surgery, have been deployed to other areas. All staff were assessed for high risk, and volunteers were sadly stepped down. Those who could work from home, and travelling from site to site has been minimised where possible. From early on this year, visitors were allowed to come into the hospitals only in extreme and end-of-life situations. However, the Trust has taken this really seriously, and the effects of being isolated and sick and cut off from loved ones has been really important to us. And as a chaplaincy team, though we're reduced in size, we've been taking messages of care and hope to those who are missing home or lonely at this time. We've been holding daily services at midday, and on Sunday, a remembrance service to reflect and to remember those who may have died or those who are struggling in our hospitals. Our annual remembrance service we're developing this year online, and they will include staff, ex-patients, our leadership team, in acknowledging all that we've come through and all that we're still going through. As chaplains, we sit with the impact of this pandemic on the whole community around us, of losing staff, of losing close friends, and the ongoing uncertainty of what's to come. No day is ever the same, and presently, as we all know, staff are working long hours, often in full PPE, in difficult environments, doing a fabulous job in showing care and compassion to our patients, their families, and to each other, and often to their chaplain too. Our team tries to support everyone from chief execs to patients to porters to staff consultants. Everyone is important to us. What we hope they find in us is this sense of a calm, supportive and prayerful presence in the midst of all that pandemic entails. I've been so thankful for our local and commission community supporting the hospitals both practically and prayerfully, and particularly for local clergy who were stepped up to come in as chaplaincy volunteers at this time. Looking how far we've come and what might be ahead, we aim to serve a community who can be proud of the service and dedication and the commitment of our staff. What's obvious almost immediately is we're now led by a very approachable leadership team. And that team includes our clinical and operational leads. At Furness, the redevelopment of our chapel space meant that chaplaincy sits right at the core of our hospital geographically, and I hope intentionally. Our annual health festival, something that we've grown as a chaplaincy team, still went ahead this year, but online. It's been important wherever we could to offer discussion points, to offer podcasts, forums for discussion, and virtual meeting places. In that, healthcare is reaching into our local community, and together we're thinking about health and what health and well-being really is. In this current pandemic, our site regulations and operations as a trust change every few weeks, like many other trusts, trying to plan strategically for something that we can't be sure of. At present, we're readying teams for the demands of winter, of creating space in ITUs and HDUs, while trying to get through our list of elective surgery and procedures that have been postponed so far. As chaplains, into a very target-driven framework, we consider the spiritual, we offer the eternal, and we listen to stories of truth and meaning. Many of you know, and I know that Christine's here today, of our collaborative group of healthcare chaplains. We meet to support, encourage, and discuss immediate and wider issues of healthcare chaplaincy together. And presently, we're extremely concerned about local and national areas of frustration in chaplaincy. Some feel a lack of understanding from their trusts, and pretty much all of us feel an inadequate lack of staffing across our chaplaincy areas across the region. What seems essential in looking ahead for a vision of healthcare chaplaincy in years to come is that we're strengthened by the church, by our local mission communities and the faith bodies we belong to. And daily, I thank God for the privilege of working in this place. It's wonderful to know that in the relentlessly changing environment of the NHS, I feel very much part of our local mission community, that I feel that we are included in your prayers and part of God's full vision for Cumbria. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. I've not seen any questions come up specifically for you on the chat. Maybe there'll be something at the end. Alan, can you take it from here?
Yeah, hi, I'm Alan Jones. I'm a vicar here in Carlisle, vicar of St Herbert's in Curragh. And Curragh is a very urban area, high crime, high deprivation, lots of drugs, lots of drug wars, lots of violence, and is in the bottom 10% of deprivation throughout the whole of Britain. It's an area where a 14-year-old boy has his head cut off over a drugs war 100 yards from my church, and I did the funeral of his funeral and have looked after his family ever since. That was a couple of years ago. And Curragh is the second highest crime area in Carlisle, the fourth highest in the whole of Cumbria. So it's a very urban parish, what we would have called a few years ago a UPA, and now I just literally call it a bit of a war zone. Many, many people on universal credits, many ex-offenders, many drug addicts, many people walking the streets in gangs at night with clubs, hurting people who are walking aimlessly wrong. So I'm the vicar of this lovely place called Curragh in South Carlisle, and I love urban ministry. But I'm also the Church of England urban chaplain for the whole city of Carlisle. And when I first took on that role around about 2006, the then bishop said to me, "We've never done this before, so here's a bit of a white sheet, but I'd like you to be involved in sport, industry, commerce and social justice." I thought, thanks very much. Off I went. And I have found chaplaincy to be utterly exciting. It makes my parish ministry thrive. It feeds me every single day being a chaplain. So the first thing I did was go to Carlisle United, and there the managing director at the time said to me, "We would love you to be our football chaplain to Carlisle United Football Club." That was in 2006. And since then, I've been the chaplain at Carlisle United Football Club. I go in twice a week, Mondays and Fridays, and I go to every single match that I am able to. I go in and do the team talk sometimes at 3 o'clock last season, though that's changed this season with COVID and everything, and give a blessing as the players walk down the tunnel. It's exciting. I love sports psychology, and yet it's so basic. A young player was told that he couldn't have a career in football any longer because he wasn't good enough and tried to commit suicide. It's that kind of pressure that's put on young players as well as the professionals. The worst thing that can happen to a professional sportsman is he gets an injury, keeps him out of the team, stops his contract, loses his mortgage, his wife leaves him, and so on. That's how they think. It's a bit of a procession of problems. Sports ministry, sports chaplaincy, I encourage you to get involved in it. It's so exciting, and it's about drawing alongside people that you perhaps wouldn't draw alongside in your daily parish ministry. And therefore, everybody in the parish is asking me and is interested in Carlisle United. And Carlisle United was so important during the two floods in Carlisle, 2005, 2010. All of the first team, the managers, everybody helped me because I did a highly skilled job. I was highly trained in how to pick up rubbish. They saw my skills, identified my skills, and I started to pick up rubbish off the streets. A highly technical job, and all of the first team helped me to do it. So Carlisle United is very much involved in the community. And if you get involved in the sports chaplaincy, you will be very much involved in your community as well. At that time, there was no industrial chaplain in Carlisle. So I went and knocked on the door, literally, of Pirelli Tyre Factory and said, can I see the managing director? A guy called John Nixon, who's become a close friend. And they showed me into his little office, and I said to him, you know, I think an industrial chaplain would be vital to your business here at Pirelli, the largest employer in Carlisle. I felt bold enough to do that because I'd been an electrician on the oil rigs for many years and so was steeped in industry. He said, let's try it. Well, that was 14 years ago, and I'm still the industrial chaplain at Pirelli and throughout the whole city. And that means going and talking to people alongside their workplace, which can be quite mundane, listening to their issues, which might range from a stroke, a heart attack, cancer, divorced, or just getting married and not getting any sleep at night because they've just had a baby. It's about the drawing alongside people in their daily events. And it's a fantastic and a privileged opportunity to do that. But also as the urban chaplain, my remit was social justice. And in 2007, I realized the huge drug problem in Carlisle and the antisocial behavior youth disorder. And I started a youth project called the Rock Youth Project. And the Rock Youth Project started with a small grant from Riverside Housing. And now we get literally 400 kids every month coming to the Rock. I employ 8 youth workers who come and work at the Rock, and I have a fantastic board of trustees who guide and help me. One of those is Debbie, and we work with some of the most poverty-stricken kids that you can ever imagine, many of whom are on medication themselves to keep themselves under control. And it's a really, really important job in trying to help young people who are in extreme danger, many being abused, many on medication. And part of our role is to keep them out of the justice system so they don't end up in one of Glyn's ex-workplaces, and that they can then go on to a thriving, happy life. And I'm really grateful to have a really fantastic board of trustees, including Debbie, who are so heartened to have those kids on their heart, to help kids to stay out of the justice system and to thrive. There's no better feeling than seeing a kid thrive and grow. So with the social justice issue, I started the Rock. We now employ 8 youth workers. We get about 400 kids. So that has been affected since COVID, of course. But keeping kids out of jail is such a fantastic privilege. And then recently, since COVID, as the urban chaplain, Debbie and I have started a homeless project where in my hall I've got a chef who has recently been awarded 5 stars for health and safety and COVID safety. And we are feeding homeless people every morning and every evening. Many of them live in tents, many of them, not one, but a lot of them live in tents around the city. And in the mornings, they pack up their tent and wander off and come here for a hot meal. We've also installed in the church a tumble dryer and a washing machine so we can wash their clothes, get them dry, give them a meal, and off they go. The homeless situation in Carlisle has escalated since COVID, as I'm sure it has around the county. And being the urban chaplain has given me the authority, if you like, or the funding streams to be able to start that homeless project and to feed homeless people at the most vulnerable time. Homeless people are classed as the most vulnerable to catching COVID, the most vulnerable. So it's a privilege to be able to help so many homeless people. And those chaplaincies overlap into my parish ministry here in St. Herbert's because they feed into it. If I'm sort of having a bad day in the parish, I'll go and visit Carlisle United. If Carlisle United's tough, then I'll go to Pirelli Tyre Factory. I think chaplaincy feeds your parish ministry and nourishes it. It isn't a distraction or a takeaway of your energy, it actually feeds your energy. And it's so exciting to be able to take the gospel by word or by deed to people that you may not ever have bumped into before. And I've never found any resistance to that.
Alan, thank you for that. I'm just aware that time's running on. There's just a little message appeared on the screen from Catherine. Can we move straight on to Dave, who has an equally wide chaplaincy, just to speak about how that fits in with the 4 marks of vision refresh? Dave.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I'm Dave Harkison. I'm United Reformed Church minister here in West Cumbria. But I'm chaplain to Whitehaven Rugby League Club. I'm chaplain at West Cumberland Hospital. And we also run Haven Saints, which is a street pastors element. Street pastors, I think I'll focus on most, the Haven Saints, because Debbie's explained about chaplaincy in a hospital. Alan's explained about sports chaplaincy, so I don't need to repeat a lot about that. Except to say that in our trust, we do community hospitals as well. So as well as being chaplain at the acute hospital in West Cumberland, I'm also covering for Workington Hospital and Cockermouth Hospital as well, as are my colleagues. Haven Saints started about 8 years ago. And it's a group of people who go out into the streets of Whitehaven on a regular basis, usually on a Saturday. We work closely together with the pubs. My wife is the convener of Haven Saints, and she attends pub watch on a regular basis every month to hear what's happening and to find out how we as Haven Saints can help our community. And by and large, that is to be the person of Christ on the street, to help people where they are less able to help themselves, either through drink or drugs. And people have accidents. They carry around flip-flops because how many women do we know go out on very, very high heels, have a few drinks and end up not being able to walk in them? So we have flip-flops to save them walking around the streets where there's broken glass, dog muck, sick, the whole lot. And that ministry there is very, very stand back and watch, as is sports chaplaincy to a certain extent. You stand back and you watch. It's loitering with intent. It's a phrase we use. So we just are there to help people when they're needed. And it actually fits in because the chaplains, the Haven Saints are following Christ daily in their lives. They're being Christ on the streets. They care deeply about what they do. They don't go out and thump people over the head with the Bible, but if someone asks them why they're doing it, they quite happily stand and talk and pray with people if requested. But they tread very gently. If there's any problems, they stand back. So I'd say we work very closely with the police and with the pubs. Our volunteers are first aid trained, so they help people until the ambulance arrives. So we're working very closely with the whole community, the whole hospitality community and the authorities as well. I'm not sure what else I can say other than that, because I'm very aware that we're running out of time. Just in case anyone's got any questions for either Alan, Debbie, or myself.
Thank you. If anything crops up afterwards, you can find all of our contact details on the Find a Chaplain section of the diocesan website. But I do hope that this brief flying presentation has given you some greater insight into chaplaincy across the whole of Cumbria, but also from some of the things that Alan was saying, a deeper understanding of how chaplaincy and circuit parish, how they complement each other. I was just thinking, I interviewed a parish priest a while ago for some research I was doing, and she said to me, Glyn, as I see it, people become chaplains because they're just not up to working in a parish. They just can't hack it. They can't do it. And on reflection, she was right, wasn't she? Some are called to do God's work in a church building setting, whilst others are called to serve God in a chaplaincy environment. We can only use the gift that God has given us in the place that we have been called to. Well, how do I know that? Back to our Bible theological default position, 1 Peter 4:10. Each one should use whatever gift he has to serve others faithfully, administering God's grace in its various forms. That probably sums it all up, and we've been asked to leave the breakout room now. Like I say, if there are any further follow-up questions, do contact one of us or any one of the other chaplains that you can find on the Find a Chaplain website. Thank you.